we are now very, very pleased to be able to welcome Nora Reid to the show. Hello. He says tentatively.
See, I'm pressing see, there's the button that says muted. And there we go. Hello.
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 There we go.
Hooray.
Yay. Oh, good.
Thanks for joining us, Nora. It's great to have you here.
Welcome.
It's good to be here.
So.
Am I echoing or anything?
You sound perfect.
Okay, good.
Fantastic.
A plane just started flying overhead extremely conveniently.
They do tend to pick their times well with our interviews. But thank you for joining us, and we are excited to talk to you about the bots you have created.
We are.
I'm excited to answer questions. Or whatever.
I mean, I love bots. I'm a big fan of anything. I mean, the phrase bot is it means lots of different things. I mean, you think robot in terms of, actual physical thing, but a bot is anything that is automated, really, that does things in an autonomous way. And your bots...
I've had to start saying bot because I would accidentally disappoint people who thought I was building actual physical robots.
Yeah, I've said to people before, check out my Twitter bot, and people have gone, you have a robot that no. It's not like... I did have a Nabaz tag once, which was a Wi-Fi bunny that could read my tweets out. Yes. So that was like a Twitter robot.
I've always wanted one of those, but that actually works.
Yeah, that's the problem. It did not work.
Look like they worked great.
It didn't work, and it was tied to a proprietary server. So when the company went bust, it became a useless chunk of plastic that occasionally lit up and then went, oh, I've got no connection. So it just flashed red. It was a shame.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
I think I might just turn it into a lamp or a thing to put chips in. I don't really know. I just have
What do you do with a plastic rabbit?
I have a dead Wi-Fi rabbit in my garage, and it's not decomposing. So,
how do you solve a problem like Nabaz tag?
Oh, I don't know, but that was a good one. But I fear we're veering off topic, and Nora has kindly agreed to spend their time with us. So
yes. So I guess my first question is, what got you interested in starting to create these bots that do such great things and amuse us so much?
I always liked being able to do things that sounded like other things. I've always been pretty good with verisimilitude and satire and stuff like that. And I really liked the idea of making something that did that kind of thing automatically, because it kind of proves a point when you can make something that sounds relatively close to real terrible startup pitches or real terrible think piece titles or whatever. And so I'd always wanted to do that, but there wasn't really an accessible format that I was able to do until some of the more accessible Twitter bot stuff came out, because I'm not a coder. I'm really bad at programming. And so it wasn't until some Google Sheets things that plugged into the Twitter API, and eventually Tracery came about, which is the tool that I use, Tracery and Cheatbots done quick, that I was able to actually do this stuff. And I realized when I started that I just had a huge trove of ideas that were in the back of my head for things that I always wanted to do but didn't have the coding knowledge to put together. And so I'm sort of just going through all of those now.
Some of them are really, really accurate as well. I'm looking through the list that you tweeted of all of the bots you've created, and there's one that's a parody of BuzzFeed titles called Buzzfiend, at Buzzfiend News if you want to find it on Twitter. And it says 18 ways to make Blood Teller brand hazelnut flavored blood spread with sidekicks.
Wow.
And that sounds exactly like the kind of thing that you would see on BuzzFeed. So they are very, very pertinent a lot of the time.
Things that have particularly formulaic titles, especially headlines, are really a good starting point to riff on.
I'm just looking at your bot for automatic spice.
Oh yeah,
the
that one was really fun. There's some word lists going around that I've been able to use. I've been using the Moby word list, which is a giant open source list, and there's some folks who have divided it up by part of speech so that I could just get a huge list of every adjective in English and have it generate terrible Spice Girls.
Yes.
And so it was really cool because it's all stuff that other people put out there, and I just had to figure out ways to connect it that were funny.
I think sometimes just the things that come out of it are so beautiful, like non-unique spice.
I quite like that one, actually. Non-unique spice.
Yes.
The very nature of it is you're trying to differentiate all the spice.
Yes. So you were talking a bit about kind of tracery and cheat bots done quick, and could you tell us a bit more about that? I mean, that's made it so much easier to start making bots, but if one of our listeners has an idea for random words they could mash together, how would they do that?
Well, what those do, a lot of people think that I'm doing something that's like reading headlines or something like that, and there are a lot of bots that are set up like that. Mine is not one of them. None of mine are like that. All they are they're like Mad Libs. You create a bunch of formulas that have basically blank spaces in them, and then you come up with lists of words that can slot into the blank spaces. And so I'll have like the Buzzfeed formulas are things that are, I read a bunch of Buzzfeed headlines and sort of got the gist of them, and then made, I think that one has probably like 50 or so formulas. Wow. That are just like blank number of tips for, or like blank and then for the number, and then it slots in like tips or hints or hacks, and then various materials, and then various projects. And once you come up with enough things on those lists, it can create a fairly decent amount of variation, and you can set it to automatically tweet every hour or every 3 hours or whatever. But the trick is just having enough variety in there that it's coming up with interesting things whenever that timer goes off. So it has to be fairly varied for it to be going off very often, or else I basically start turning it down. Once I start getting bored with it, I'll turn it back from 1 hour to 3 hours or 6 hours.
Yeah, there is one bot that I'm aware of that does take real headlines. It's a bot called CNN Your Mum. And it reads headlines from CNN.com and just takes out nouns and puts your mum in place. So
wow, that sounds cool.
35 different ways to save money on your mum. Wow. Or Joe Biden will appear on your mum next season. And stuff like that.
Wow.
I really like Headline Smasher, which grabs two headlines and puts them together. And there's a good one that replaces all instances of millennial with snake people.
I like that.
That's awesome. We millennials are.
Yes, we snake people are. In fact, I've seen you can get an extension for your browser that does that on every page you visit, and it'll also replace the millennial generation with the serpentine population.
Yeah, I don't know which one of them came first, but it's the same general idea. There's also one that replaces every instance of cyber with spider, which is pretty fun.
Yes.
You'll find a lot of good stuff like that from just people doing tracery stuff like me, and people who are doing stuff that actually plugs into live content. If you look on the Bot Ally hashtag, that's where a lot of folks who are interested in bot stuff and also frequently concerned about issues of bot ethics and social justice and stuff like that. A lot of us hang out on there. And so you get to see some back end stuff on how we talk about the bots that we're working on and stuff too. But that's also just a fun way to find out about new ones.
An observation from Scattermoon in our chat room is that the problem with bots that use real headlines is that they don't know when it's inappropriate, which is very true.
Yeah, and even ones that don't use real headlines, it still can be problematic. There's definitely times when I've not thought of a way that ThinkPeaceBot could put something together and it came up with something sort of horrible, and I've had to take out keywords for that reason, because you sort of have to imagine all of the different ways that things would get shoved together.
Yeah.
And make sure that it's not coming up with something like, and so I end up with like a thing where if there's any sexual content in a bot, there can't also be anything that mentions children, because you don't want those to be connected together.
Yeah.
And so there's some interesting ethical issues with that, but people frequently send me stuff and are like, can you put this in there? And just because of the way that bots end up connecting things. And also, I've just taken down the headline ones temporarily when there's bad stuff happening in the world, because I don't want people getting, when their ears are already pricked for bad news, I don't want to accidentally
break some news that didn't
make
happen.
them think that it's even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it's, you know, the smashing words together that are inappropriate is one thing, but at least, you know, timing-wise, that just kind of happens, whereas obviously a headline-grabbing bot could, you know, take something that is unfolding or developing in the world, you know, at that moment in time, and really not do good things for it, for people. So yeah, there are dangers. And Scattermoon, of course, there in the chat room, reminding us that it's not all fun and games, and that we should remember that the world is also doom and gloom.
The other interesting, the other interesting bot thing to think about, and in a sense, we've run into this with a bot, and we'll talk about that a bit later, is that making it obvious that the bot is a bot is often quite important as well.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to not do it.
True.
And
bots that are like troll honeypots that
that's very fun.
Mention keywords that chat with people and waste their time so they don't waste my time.
And that's kind of true, but you had an instance with a bot version of you, and we'll talk about our bots in a bit, but your bot, Catherine, ran into Amazon support.
Yes. Amazon Help in the UK responded to the bot version of me.
It tweeted something about Amazon Prime, didn't it? Because it mashes your tweets together.
And they had this whole confusing conversation, and I kind of had to step in and explain to Amazon Help that, oh, sorry, that's a robot.
But it went on for quite some time.
It did. They exchanged several tweets.
Is it like a Markov one, like an ebooks one?
It is, yeah.
Those ones could sort of accidentally sound surprisingly human and plausible if you don't have the context, which is always kind of interesting.
Yeah, my Markov bot at one stage was coming up with stuff that was very, very like me, and then, you know, I did an update and it just went from being very like me to nothing like me. So, but very interesting all the same. But there are so many different kinds of bots. I mean, you mentioned these ebooks bots, the Markov chain generator, which is a very different algorithm and a very different kind of bot to the ones that are a bit more formulaic, where you're adding a couple of words together. But I mean, really, the aim of these bots seems to be very much, from my point of view, to really entertain and inform. What's the motivation for, and it's sounding very dramatic here, what's your motivation? What is the motivation behind the bots that you've made? Are any of them for anything other than a bit of fun?
A few of them are like deliberate satire. I mean, ThinkPeaceBot is the main one of these, but I have, and Botist Takes, which is sort of the feminist social justice version of that bot. And those are sort of deliberately meant to make fun of the way that people write, especially about millennials. But I do have a lot of other ones that are sort of health helper bots and mental health helper bots. I have one that just posts to remind you to take your medications every hour. And I know a lot of people I've gotten a lot of messages from people who are like, oh, I was about to forget, but I followed your medication bot and it reminded me. And I have ones that just remind you to drink water. The Hydrate bot is one of my really popular ones. And I released the code for that one. So people have made forks of that remind them to do other things.
Yeah.
There's a really nice one that I followed
like that.
a couple of days ago that was like a friend, or like a Yay Friends bot, and it just tells you that you're valued and you're cared about as a person, and that you're worth something, and it will occasionally
responds to
it tweets things at me, and if I like a tweet or something, it replies to me. It's lovely. It's nice to have a little interaction.
It's so cute. I love
very
that
sweet.
one. That's not one of mine. It's just it's one of the ones that's inspiration for a lot of the mental health ones that I've done too.
Yeah, it's a very lovely bot. So I discovered that the other day and followed it, and it is nice. It sounds, it's nice. It actually sounds like a few of my friends, which is interesting. So it's like having them there even when they're asleep. Thinking of no certain Australians that are normally asleep for half of the day that we have here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of good can be done with bots as well. That sort of thing of kind of reminding people to do stuff or giving people kind of positive reinforcement is definitely a very, very nice side effect of being able to create robots that mash words together and tweet every so often.
Do you know what it reminds me of a bit, though?
What does it remind you of?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I don't actually remember. I mean, you won't, Chris, but there was back in the early days of computers, before I had the internet, there was this great program called Eliza, and it came on a floppy disk, and it was like it was designed to be a fake psychotherapist in a program, but you could. The idea was you could talk to it, and it would just ask you. Yeah. It could just ask you about your day and things like that, and it would just prompt you to have a conversation. So it wasn't doing much, and it certainly wasn't very qualified, but it was one of the very first things that you could type into a computer, and it would look at the words that you were typing in and give you what it thought was an appropriate response. So it would
restate what you said back to you sometimes.
Yes, which was
really
very
cool.
powerful.
I definitely did a lot of fooling around with that at a really impressionable age, and it really left an impression.
Yeah, I was quite young when I first used that on an old computer that we had at home, but it did have a profound effect, and it really influenced my thoughts about the way that computers interact with people. And I think it feeds really nicely into this world of bots that we live in.
Yeah. The other thing that I think of as sort of the spiritual ancestor is the various Dungeons and Dragons tables. And I think that was the other thing that was a big influence on me.
Yeah, I think, that as far as inspiration for these things goes, there are so many different things that a lot of people that maybe grew up at the start of the internet or just before the internet age really began in earnest, when it wasn't available to just kind of everyone all the time, everywhere. There are so many of those things like Eliza, like Dungeons and Dragons tables, like, things that you don't see as much of anymore, or things that have changed shape entirely since the world of the internet came along. I think it's really nice to see a lot more kind of human-centered things being created online, especially the kind of the helper bots that remind you to drink water and take your medication and breathe.
Yeah.
I suppose it'd be a bit much if there was a bot that every 3 seconds it said breathe in, and then every 3 seconds it said breathe out.
I think Twitter would ban that in about 3 seconds for looking like spam.
Far too many requests in one go. So what next? I mean, are there any bots that you're kind of currently mulling over, or is there anything that's maybe a bit more complicated that you've not quite worked out how to do yet?
I've been. It's only recent that they've added. That the creator of Cheatbots Done Quick has added the ability to respond and to have bots that talk back. And I played with that a little bit. I have a couple that that I send trolls to so that they talk to the bot instead of to me. And that's been a fun way of using that. But I also made ones that do like one that generates really silly deaths. And so it'll generate silly deaths for you if you @message it. That's just like it comes up with just
I hope that's
you're
text,
killed
not
with
an
ridiculous
actual
weaponry and stuff.
Yeah, that's text. I hope,
That
but
one's
not
called "You
actual
Have
weapons.
Died," with underscores between the words.
Oh, nice! Like throwback to the kind of text-based adventures.
Yeah, it's definitely inspired by those, and there's a lot of sort of ridiculous weaponry, like guns that shoot puppies and stuff like that. I mean, shoot puppies out of the guns, not murder puppies.
I want a gun that will shoot puppies out of it, because then I could just pull a trigger and I get a puppy.
As long as it shot them out
It
gently.
would probably eventually be sort of difficult to take care of all the puppies, but it's
Challenge
sort of
accepted.
a conceptually fun one.
So
Yeah, it's the future for me is definitely looking at how to make ones that interact with people more, and figure out what it changes when there's sort of the appearance of an interpersonal interaction, even when it's random number generated.
So I've just found "You Have Died" on Twitter, and it is there are a lot of people tweeting at it, and it's responding with things like "You dropped dead after a dragon put a spell on you," and things like that. And it looks like it's
I want to
generating.
add to that one. There's a lot of ridiculous ways to die, and so there's a lot of ways to expand that and make it sillier.
There are a lot of ridiculous ways to die. I mean, I can think of like 23 just in the studio.
Yes.
Yeah. We've still got a bucket
If you
of
want to
green.
send them, I might throw them in.
We've still got a bucket of green ping pong balls left over from the end of our last series. So
Yes.
anything involving a bucket of green ping pong balls is
Drowning in a
fine by
sea
me.
of green ping pong balls.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have sort of a long list of inventory items that could definitely go in.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
They are plentiful and they are green.
Up until a few months ago, I mean, some of the soundproofing would just fall off the wall
Yeah.
during a show.
That's true, but it's very hard to get killed by a featherlight stone tile, foam tile rather. If it was stone, it
Stone
probably
tile,
would
that
do
was.
damage. Oh dear.
It would require creative usage.
Yeah, you'd have to be very, very determined to kill someone with foam.
I'd have to get foam in my eye and then maybe trip over and land in a bucket of ping pong balls and then fall down the stairs.
Yeah, there'd be a sequence of events going on.
Yeah, but so.
One of the things that I really like about the weird object death thing is because it sort of forces the user to come up with a story, just like you guys just did. And so coming up with ways to inspire that either just in people's imagination when they read the tweet, or responding to the tweet and quote tweeting it and sharing it with their friends with their ideas of how this could happen, is a really fun usage of bots as a sort of impromptu social creative writing prompt.
It's
Yeah.
almost like, you get these card games sometime that have, scenarios on and then you have to explain them to people. It's a bit like that, but in a Twitter bot. I really like that. We should actually think about, maybe we should use them in the show. In fact, after the next song, let's bring up a couple and see if we can ad-lib stories. I think that's a really cool thing to do.
You guys talked about Magic Realism bot, I think, last week.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, we did.
And that's one of the ones that a lot of them are self-contained, but a lot of them seem to beg to have a story written for them.
Yeah.
That one's a big inspiration for me. I really like that one.
Yeah.
We might have to give that a go after the next song. I think that would be quite a cool challenge.
Another one of my favorites
Cool.
is at micro SFF, which is science fiction and fantasy stories that fit within a tweet, and it's another one. But I don't think that one is a bot. But it's it's stories that fit within 140 characters. And
there are some really good ones that are, and I know there's some that are hybrid where there's I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but there's one where it generates little sci-fi stories, and then sometimes the creator will reply to them and extend the story past the bot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I love when bots tell stories, because some of them, because it's so random, some of them are completely implausible and ridiculous, but some of them do sound really interesting. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So what's the future? What's the future of bots? Do you think that this will grow? Do you think this will become a bigger thing? Can you see a Twitter bot maybe not just being a Twitter bot, but also a bot across all platforms? Will your Twitter bots be texting me anytime soon?
I mean, they kind of already can. The way that you can set up alerts on your phone, I know a lot of people do that for the mental health reminder ones. And I definitely have some of them bridging into Tumblr also. I just have them auto-posting the same content. And so some of them are a lot more popular on Tumblr because, like I said, with the ones that people add stories to, people really like expanding the stories, and it's easier to share something longer form in that format. And so people really have a lot of fun doing that. But I don't know about like the future for bots in general, especially beyond Twitter, because there's just been an explosion recently of people who are not making money off of them. They're not doing anything commercial with them. Some of them might have tip jars in the way that I do, but they're not doing them for companies or anything like that. And then you have these big things like Microsoft Tay and commercial bots that are coming from a totally different angle and almost always have no idea how Twitter actually works.
Yeah.
And so are unleashed on Twitter, and immediately the results are completely horrible. And so like there's this weird juxtaposition of people like me who are coming from the Twitter angle and being like, how can we insert automation into this space that we already exist in and do something interesting there, versus people who know how to do the automation and know how to do the conversational aspects and are like, how do we plug this into Twitter? That angle, the results tend to, in my opinion, not be as good because every platform has a different way of working socially or a different kind of etiquette. And so if you have a Twitter bot directly translated to some other platform, it will still be acting like a Twitter bot and not whatever else it's supposed to be on.
Well, we look forward to seeing what comes next and seeing more bots from you.
Yeah, just before we let you go, I tweeted at You Have Died from the Geekly Chronicles asking how we died, and it says, we kicked the bucket in a distressing biomechanics incident.
Well, I think we'll have to have a think about the story behind that one.
Yes.
Sounds legit.
That's respectable.
Yeah. It's
It could have been worse.
Based on the amount of technology around us right now, that could well be the case.
Yes.
The studio may come alive and consume the three of us.
Yes. Thank you very much for joining us, Nora. It has been fantastic
Sure, thanks
to
for
speak to
having
you.
me. It was great talking.
And I believe you have a request for us.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask you to play my favorite Radical Face song.
Well, we've got it queued up here for you, so we'll let you introduce it.
Okay. This is, oh my God, which one did I give you? I gave you The Ship in Port. Yes.
You did.
Because it's one of the ones that really appeals to me as an artist for talking about taking risks.
Well, Nora,
and
thank
learning.
you. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, and here is your song.